This is question number 13 of practice homework 4. So the firm's just paid a dividend of $3.45 on its stock. So this first sentence tells us D0, not D1, D0, because that's just paid. D0 equals $3.45. The growth rate in dividends is expected to be a constant 5% per year indefinitely. So that small g in our formula is 5%. Investors require a return of 13% for the first 3 years, a return of 11% for the next 3 years, and a return of 9% thereafter. So the difference between this question and many other probably more typical questions is that the required return is not a constant. It changes over time. So the question is, what is the current share price? And rounding requirement: do not round intermediate calculations and round your answer to 2 decimal places. And the key to solve this problem is to discount the cash flows relative to corresponding to the return, the required return that applies to that particular period's cash flow. So to help us to understand what's going on, I think it helps to draw a timeline. So what happens is, remember, we have 3 years, first 3 years, and then so we have this, suppose this is current time spot, and this is 1 year later, 2 year later, and 3 year later, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and there's no maturity, so this continues indefinitely. And the question tells us that within this period, from for the first 3 years, that R, let me call this R1, that equals, let's go back to the setup. The investors require a return of 13% for the first 3 years. So this is 13%. And then for the next 3 years, which means let me go from there, and the return R2, the required return is 11%. And finally, thereafter, this return is 9%. And further, we're provided with D0, which is $3.45. Yeah. So we know that the dividend discounted cash flow model or dividend growth model says that the question is asking us what is the price today, P0. So P0 is simply the present value of all future cash flows, right? Because intrinsic value, remember, in the first class, we talk about the organizing theme of the entire course is intrinsic value. And we actually have one question in quiz 1 testing your knowledge about that, because the whole course is just revolving around different elements of that concept, intrinsic value. Intrinsic value is simply the present value of all future cash flows. And in this case, all future cash flows for the stock is simply the all future dividends. So that's the future cash flows. And then we are further told that small g, the growth rate of dividend, is a constant 5%. So in session 2, we learned how to calculate the, if you think about this, this is the uneven stream of cash flows, right? Every period cash flows changes, the dividend changes, in other words. But there's a pattern because we have a growth rate. The growth rate for the dividend is constant. So that means D1, based on D0, we can figure out D1. D1 is D0 times, yeah, let me write it down. D1 equals D0 times 1 plus G. And further, D2 equals D1 times 1 plus G. And because D1 equals D0 1 plus times 1 plus G, so if we plug in that, we can get D2 equals D0 times 1 plus G squared, and so on and so forth. So that's this is D1, and this is D2, and this is D3. So the key here is that we need to apply the different required return, which is the discount rate for different dividend. Normally, the discount rate or the required return is constant throughout the time periods, but here they change over time. You can see that we have 3 discount rates. So how do we solve this problem? What we can do is, first we can figure out, so this is D6 and this is D7. What we can do is to first we can figure out the price here. So this is P6. The price, the expected price at year 6. And how do we do that? Because when we stand here, so we draw a separate line. When we stand here, now the discount rate, and look forward, now the discount rate will be a constant, right? R3 equals 9%. That's constant. So we can use the formula. We can use the formula to figure out P6. P6 is D7. Remember, P0 equals D1 over, the formula is, if it's P equals D1 over R minus G, right? We know that formula. D1 is next period dividend over R minus G. So the numerator here needs to be the next period's dividend. So next period relative to 6, that's 7. So divided by R3, and here is R3 and minus G. So D7, if we go back to this formula, must be equal to D0 times 1 plus G raised to the power of 7, right? And then R3 minus G. So now we can plug in the numbers. 3.45 times 1 plus 5% raised to the power of 7. And then 9%, 0.09 minus 0.05. So this gives me we can just use Excel to help us to calculate this, or you can use your calculator, whichever defined to be more convenient. 3.45 times 1 plus 5% and raised to the power of 7. And then this divide, we need to use a parenthesis because otherwise it's going to do the division first and then subtract that. But here we actually need to do the subtraction first. So that's why I need to use this. So this gives me this number. So then just recall that this is P6. So now basically, after I got this P6, I can just get rid of all this. Get rid of all this information. Now I only keep this P6. Okay? Because P6 basically summarizes all future dividends and the discount rate. So once I know that, I don't need this information anymore. I just want to keep one single number just to minimize, make our life simpler. So this is P6. So this is now as if the investor knows that by the end of 6 years, the price of the stock is going to be P6, and P6 is just calculated to be $121.36. And then in between, he also knows the dividend, given the dividend growth rate, and also knows this 2 discount rate. So now actually we can use the same trick, right? We can use the same trick and figure out what is the expected price at this times 3. And because here I can use, what I can do is, if I want to calculate expected price at times 3, and then when I stand at this point 3, when I look forward, I have dividend, right? Dividend here, here, and year 6 dividend. So I have 3 dividends, and also plus this final price, P6. So I have these 4 cash flows. I can discount these 4 cash flows back to P3 to get the present value of all future cash flows, which is P3 times 3 to get the discounted value of all future cash flows for P3. And because the dividend, actually, because we haven't learned this growing annuity, so I think it makes sense simply to write this down as a formula. So what we just talked about is P3 equals D4 over R2. Not that. Hmm. 1 month plus R2. So what I meant, maybe it helps to, what I meant is you have your dividend is right here, that's D4, and your dividend is right here, D5, and finally your dividend is right here, D6. So D4, when you discount one period, 1 year back, and that's how you can get the present value in terms of year 3. So that's why I divide this by 1 plus the discount rate. And for D5, I actually need to discount period or 2 years back. So I need to take the square. And D6 3 years back. So I need to take the cube. And finally, P6, don't forget that, because P6 summarizes all future dividends information and the discount rate. So, and this is P6, and then discounted, still discount 3 years back, so cube. So now I can simply plug in the number D4 equals D0 times 1 plus G raised to the 4th power and 1 plus divided 1 plus R2 and plus D0 times 1 plus G raised to the 5th power and 1 plus R2 and plus D0 times 1 plus G to the 6th power and 1 plus R2 cube. Here I forgot this is a square. And finally, P6 is calculated here, right? So this is just P6 divided by 1 plus R2 and cube. So once I do that, I can just plug in the numbers. So this is D0 equals 3.45, okay? And R2, that's 11%. If we go back to the setup to confirm, yes, R2 is 11%. So we can simply calculate P3. P3 equals, go back to our formula, it's D0, right? It's D0 times, oh, I forgot this G. Small g, that's 5%. Okay, so P3, that equals D0 times 1 plus G raised to the power of 4, right? Raised to the power of 4, and divided by 1 plus this R2. And continue to add B2, which is D0, times 1 plus this G, and then raised to the power of 5, and then divide by 1 plus the discount rate R2, and now I need to take the square and continue. So that's D0 again times 1 plus the growth rate G, and now raised to the power of 3, no, 6, because that's the 6 years dividend, and then divided by 1 plus the discount rate, the R2, and then cube, and finally plus P6 divided by 1 plus the discount rate R2, and then raised to the power of 3. So that's P3. So now you see I have basically with this P3, I can now, following the similar logic as what I did for P6, I can get rid of all future cash flows because this P3 succinctly summarizes all future cash flows information and all future discount information, discount rate information. So that's why I can do that. So I can get rid of all this because I don't like this non-time period. Okay, nobody likes it probably. The easier, the better. Okay, so that's why we can do that. But with that P3 calculated, we can actually do this. So now the question boils down to calculating, following the same logic, the same steps, boils down to calculating this P0. So for P0, let me write down here. So now you see the advantage of doing the erase. Now I can write down on these blanks. Yes, gives me some emptiness. P0 equals D1, right? D1 divided by, now I need to discount at this. The discount rate here is R1. It's no longer R2 or R3 because for the first 3 years, the discount rate is R1, 13%. And then continue to add D2 over 1 plus R1. Now 2 years back, take square, and continue this, D3 over 1 plus R1, now cube. Now finally, don't forget we still have this P3. Actually, all we have done so far is trying to figure out this P3, right? Because P3 summarizes all future information. So that's why we can take advantage of that. So divided by 1 plus the discount rate, and then raised to the power of 3. So eventually, when we summarize, we can just do similar calculations. Now D1 equals, this recording is a bit long, so bear with me. So this is D0 times 1 plus G, and then divide that by 1 plus R1. And then this is D0 times 1 plus G square, and then Y divided by 1 plus R1 square. And finally, this is D0 times, not finally yet, 1 plus G cube. And then this is 1 plus R1 raised to the third power. And finally, this is finally, so this is P3 divided by 1 plus R1 raised to the power of 3. Now I can go back to Excel. Excel is R1 equals 13%. So that's the only information the new information. So now P0, I can just plug in the numbers. D0, that's D0 is right here, times 1 plus that small g, which is 5% here, and then divided by 1 plus R1, right? Discount 1 period, 1 year back, and then continue to add D2, which is D0 times 1 plus that growth rate, and then raised to the power of 2, and then divide that by 1 plus R1 raised to the power of 2, and then go on. So D0 plus D0 times 1 plus that small g, and raised to the power of 3, and then divide by 1 plus that discount rate R1 and raised to the power of 3. And so finally, don't forget about that P3. As we said, we have taken labored effort trying to find this P3. So that's a very important number here. So B5 divided by 1 plus the R1 and raised to the power of 3. So eventually we come down to this final number. And remember, the question asks us to keep 2 decimal places. So we can just change this format. Just keep 2 decimal places. So then we can just copy this number back, and then we check our work. Great.